As First Nations people, our history obviously isn't really written in the books. We tell our history orally. Now you may find some writing on stone and all those kind of things surrounded around the territory here, but for the most part, we engage through story to both engage our listener and also to educate. In this way, it also helps keeps us accountable to each other. By being in front of one another and telling each other these stories, the persons who hear them, they reinforce the truth behind them. And if you tell the story incorrectly, well, you're a liar. Having said that, allow me to tell you a quick story. Imagine it's the year 1818. It's the middle of winter. The time is 6:55 a.m. Camped near the Bow River is a small tribe of Blackfoot people. In one teepee is a small family, sound asleep, except for Inukskini, the husband, who lies there comfortably next to his wife under the soft, warm, thick buffalo hide blanket wrapped around them. In the middle of the teepee is a fire, left with nothing but hot embers, keeping the teepee warm in this cold, frigid winter. You can smell the sage and the buckskin and the sweetgrass as you take a breath in. A spiral of smoke makes its way upward and out towards the center of the teepee, where its spiritual pattern is violently interrupted by the harsh winter winds that we experience here in southern Alberta. But inside, it's warm, comfortable. Suddenly, a familiar tension fills Inukskini, and his bladder yells at him, "Hey, dude, we gotta go, wake up, man, we gotta go now!" And Inukskini jumps up, he throws the buffalo robe off of him, right? He runs over, he grabs his moccasins, he puts them on, the thick ones with the fur, not the Nikes, okay, just to be clear, right, okay? He grabs those, he grabs his robe, he gets out there, he goes outside, and it's freezing, his knees buckle, he almost goes down. It's minus 18 degrees Celsius out there. But the harsh winter winds of 90 kilometers an hour make it feel more like minus 32, minus 34. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but you get the idea. There's Inukskini, cold, freezing, full bladder, blinded by the snow and the morning reflection in his eyes. He turns around to grab his Ray-Bans, but realizes those haven't been invented yet. Yeah. So he faces the storm and he continues on, knee-deep in snow. He's giving her, he's going, he's staggering. A heavy gust of wind nearly blows him over, but he makes it to the pea tree, located nearly about 100 yards away from camp. He turns his back to the wind because he remembers what the blind man said about peeing into the wind. He hesitates, and then relief. Did I mention I'm an actor? Trained for 3 years in Toronto, yeah. So, yeah, our ancestors were tough. There was nothing easy back then. Now, fast forward 200 years, and I had the similar problem, but except for me, I was really lucky. I had a Tim Hortons that was literally 30 yards away from the camp, so I couldn't exactly say that I was roughing it. The year was 2018. Exactly 800 meters from our exact location here, on the corner of 5th Street and 6th Avenue Southwest, myself and 2 other individuals raised a protest camp in response to the injustices that we've been experiencing, specifically in regards to the murder of 2 young First Nations youth. This hit really close to home for me because I have a daughter who's 14 now. The young woman was 15 when she was raped and murdered, and her murderer was acquitted. This propelled a lot of us across the country into action. We wanted to do something. We were angry. We were frustrated. We needed to act. And at that point in time, this is what we decided to do. We had a tent, which had a history of protesting, actually. We had signs, obviously. We held vigils. We honored those who had passed and those who were murdered. We came together, we supported each other. We did what we could to fill this hole that we felt of injustice, of hurt, of pain, of loss. And It was beautiful. It was perhaps one of the most amazing weeks that I've ever had in my life. But we weren't the only ones experiencing this. As I mentioned, it was across the country, and what was the most, I believe, inspirational thing is our camp wasn't the only one. Our camp was actually second after a young woman in Winnipeg in front of the legislature building raised theirs. And Winnipeg started it, Calgary, and then Regina set up their camp. Most notably, they made a lot of noise, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. We were all in the news. We were making headlines. We were getting our voices out there, and things were going great. But then I opened my big mouth. I challenged the people who I probably shouldn't have challenged at that point in time without having any real, retrospective thought of them actually coming to the camp, which they did. The next day, I had 2 Caucasian women come to the camp, fresh off their afternoon cocktails. That was very apparent after getting, a few feet from them. And they made it abundantly clear that their opinion was that the young man who was murdered deserved to die. Needless to say, that conversation didn't go very well, and as we all do, my defense mechanism at that point in time was to pull out my phone and begin recording. Initially, they didn't notice at first, but then once they did, the conversation ended and they scurried about. One morning, I woke up to this lovely message. It didn't faze me none at all, actually. I just responded with the equivalent of, I'm rubber and you're glue. He didn't really like that response very much. And he made it known that this was his feeling. Again, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. I chose the diplomatic route. I chose to be respectful. I chose to maintain true to the principles that my ancestors had taught me about being respectful, even in the face of racism and ignorance as this. This continued on for a little bit while, and I had my fun. Of course, I posted it, and it went semi-viral because we all love controversy, right? So, yeah. But it didn't have the exact intended effect that I wanted. The damage had been done. And the comments and the messages that were being put online made it clear that my safety was no longer guaranteed. So we actually decided to take down the camp in solidarity with the young woman in Winnipeg who started the camps as well. But I'm naturally defiant. And it didn't take long for us to reorganize with a more structured setting this time. I realized that what we were missing was a proper guidance and a connection to the culture, so we enlisted the help of elders, and we got more community members to re-raise the camp and come together to help us create this. My cousin David there, we put him to work. We all call him Dinosaur. We were gifted things from the community right away. It was community support that built this camp. It was community that built this. It wasn't me. I'm just the spokesperson for it, and I got blessed to be that. But it was community that came together to gift us all of these things: the fireplace, the water, the food, the firewood, buttons. They made buttons for us. I couldn't believe it. And if that wasn't enough, we were gifted a teepee from a Cree woman who I now call my auntie. And we put David to work again, of course, as you can see there. So we had him really helping us out there. And with all the donations that were coming in, we raised enough monetary funds to buy a second teepee. And we got a very, very good deal from a good friend of ours from the Piikani Nation, who's actually a relation of mine. And this time we asked our elder, that's my dad there actually, and our grandfather there, to come in and actually teach us the proper Blackfoot traditional ways of raising a teepee. And once we had that, we were rolling. We were able to engage in the community in ways that we have been hoping to do so for so long. We had rallies, we had feasts, we had painting classes for the youth, we had round dances, mini powwows. We even shot a music video there for a local artist. We started a podcast that's currently sitting on the shelf right now, but we still have a lot of things going on with that, We had my brother here make dried meat, and we had meat hanging up in the teepees at one point in time. Visitors could come by and they could literally strip off a piece of meat if they came by and visited with us. We had vendors, we were cooking traditional food, but most importantly, we engaged the youth. First Nations kids had a place here in the city where they could identify. This is what it was about.
Give it up, man. One more time. Oh! High five. Yeah.
We were doing amazing things, and it wasn't only us. Their camp in Regina was making huge waves. They were actually facing controversy, and they were taken down at one point in time, but they came back even stronger, raising, I think, as many as 15 teepees at one point in time. They continued to make national headlines, and their fight for changes in Canada's foster care system, it continues to inspire me to this day. We were doing amazing things, and it was working. What we aimed to do was no longer protest, but to fill a gap in the city's infrastructure that hasn't existed for any First Nations. And that is, there's over 400 churches here in the urban center of Calgary, multiple synagogues, mosques, and temples, but nothing for the First Nations people to practice our spirituality, to connect to each other and our culture. By having this space, we were able to do that. But there was controversy. There's actually a happy ending to this picture here, actually. This gentleman came by the camp and said probably the most quintessential racist things that you can tell a First Nations person. I later found out that he was intoxicated, of course, but not nearly as much as the aforementioned two Caucasian women. This gentleman actually sat down with me after I confronted him and said, "What's your problem?" My defense mechanism, of course, was to pull out my phone and record it. He called me out and said, "Put your phone away and then I'll talk to you." And so we sat down. Now, what surprised me when I asked him why he was so angry and why he felt the need to lash out at people that he was just walking down the street from, that he had no idea who they were, that he's never met before, why are you lashing out this way? His argument was that I have to pay for parking and you get to be there for free. I don't need to get into what we've paid for us to have to be there, but I explained to him exactly what I said to you. 400 plus churches, multiple synagogues and temples, but nothing for the First Nations people. We're not here to ask for anything. We're here to fill a gap. We're here to do it ourselves. Well, what are you protesting? Nothing. Well, what are you fighting for? Nothing. We're here to heal. We're here to do it ourselves. We're here to implement the knowledge that we've had for centuries, for millennia, that we've always had. We know how to take care of our children. We know how to love our women. We know how to take care of this land. And we know all of this. That's my mom. My grandmother, more specifically, she raised me. Today is actually her birthday. Mom, if you're watching this, happy birthday. I love you. She's the reason I was able to put aside my anger and be diplomatic and be true to the principles that our ancestors held. For us, it's about our children. It's always been about our children. We've always known how to love and take care of our children. There are historical articles, journals written about their interactions with First Nations when the settlers first arrived, about how we loved our children and how much they loved us, how we were connected so deeply. I'm upset as a First Nations man at what happens and what continues to happen to this day. But I'm hopeful. What I experienced at that camp, the non-native support that I experienced at that camp, makes me understand that we are all here together. We don't want to build walls. We're bridges and ladders kind of people. We want to connect and we want to raise you up. That's why we're here. We know how to take care of this land. First Nations people can save the world if we are given a chance to sit at the proverbial table. We don't want anybody to go anywhere. I enjoy Netflix way too much. Having said that, as a First Nations man, as a Blackfoot man who didn't have to endure the atrocities or the genocidal issues of residential school and all that baggage, I encourage you and I welcome you to Blackfoot territory, to this land, to this territory, to this country, to live with us together, to learn from us. Thank you.